the work session for December 10th. We have two things on the agenda. We have a petition to vacate city right-of-way, 12th Street, for a discussion. And this is just on the work session. If you want something that's going to go into the record later, it's also up for a public hearing. So, James, you want to give us a quick overview on this that we discussed?
Sure. This is for a request for public right-of-way abandonment at the far east end of 12th Street. Basically, right close to Rock Creek, there's a little sliver abandoned daily between that and the creek. And the piece of right-of-way in question has had a garage on it for approximately 70 years. And it was never ever given to the landowner. I did do some background trying to find out when the council approved it. I couldn't find anything there or the exact time and how it occurred. The city's basically has three options. We can approve the request to abandon the right of way. We could essentially do nothing and leave it the way it has been, or we could potentially look at doing a easement or a right of way agreement, which would be similar to a easement. The benefits to doing nothing or doing a right of way agreement are that if the garage were ever more than 50% destroyed by natural disaster, we could reclaim that right away. As we've heard from multiple people, they're concerned about us giving away land along Rock Creek in particular, and we would have the opportunity potentially to get it back. The downside to that, as I see it, is you go down the alleys around here, almost every non-conforming garage, people will just do enough to it just to keep it going. And so we have a lot of very aged garages that obviously need a lot of work, but they're grandfathered in. And I suspect, that this could be a very similar case to that, where that garage could just be sitting there 100 years from now if we elected to do nothing or did a right-of-way agreement where eventually it had to go away if it was destroyed.
So is there a section of daily between 12th and the creek?
So there is a tiny triangle of land between Daly and between 12th Street and Rock Creek. According to cadastral, it is owned by the applicant, Kurt Halleck. Although when I was at the county trying to find some decisions and approvals that had anything to do with this property, I did not see anything over there that clearly gave that right of way of Daly to them. We have seen there have been other portions of Daly that were given to the wrong people, and we just recently went through that on a stretch of Daly between 11th Street and 12th Street, where one property owner was given all the Daly Avenue, and there was 3 property owners who were also adjacent to it and should have received some of it. But digging through that stuff is extremely time consuming. So I spent about 3 hours at the county trying to dig through that. I wasn't able to see exactly how that daily was supposed to be abandoned. But I did not find any evidence of where it was supposed to go.
Discussion at the table.
James, were you able to identify who owns the land just to the south of 12th Street, east of Hagen?
I did not look that up, no.
Do we know if that's, okay.
But we can, I did confirm, just to be 100% sure, that we can abandon half of a right-of-way. Some people, I think, have a perception that if you abandon a right-of-way, you're abandoning all of it. Half goes to each property owner that's adjacent to it. We can be specific with the right-of-way abandonment to only allow half, or we could say the 10 feet if we wanted to, or anything along those lines.
My recollection from our last conversation was that you had specifically stated that this abandonment was not really your preferred option. Is that still true?
I've kind of been on the fence on this for pretty much since it was, introduced to me by the applicant. I told him I would probably recommend denial on it. I did my staff report, I gave, a kind of recommended yes, in large part just because I felt that if we don't, it'll probably be there forever. So whatever we do, there's pluses and minuses to it. We could abandon it, and 5 years later, a flood could eat away part of the back side of that property and take it out, for example, and then we may regret, or we would probably regret abandoning it at that point. But like I said, otherwise, there's a good chance it'll be there 100 years from now, whereas if we did a abandonment, there's a pretty good chance at some point in time, somebody will want to take that down that garage, put something else there, and at that point in time, we could require a greater setback off of Rock Creek.
So my follow-up question is actually for the city attorney. Were I the landowner in this situation, this sounds to me like what I remember we got a lot in Hawaii, and I've seen it in Utah, and I know the land is huge here, but it seems to me like there's almost a case for just an easement by prescription here. Hey, I've been using it for this purpose for a really long time. And my question is, would that be a better mechanism? Do we sit back and wait for somebody to file a prescriptive easement? Or if we think that they've got a likely case to that, do we avoid that process and abandon the right of way?
My understanding of Montana law is you cannot gain a prescriptive easement on municipal property. So if the city owns it, you can't claim a prescriptive easement.
Okay, so that's just on private property.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, the city can get a prescriptive easement on somebody else's property, but you can't get it on the city property.
A question for James. In some of the correspondence I read, it mentions a survey, and in it said there was a building permit pulled, filed. Do we have any documentation on that?
I didn't look up for a building permit. I looked up the transfer of land on Daly Avenue. And I did try to find some sort of council approval on the garage being there. I did not find those. But typically our building permits don't go much past 1990. We just don't have records going back that far.
Sure.
Eric?
Does the, I guess, Mr. Mayor, does the property owner own any land between the end of 12th, which would be abandoned, and the creek?
That's that Daly Avenue slice.
Okay, that has already been abandoned?
That's my understanding.
Okay, so not approving the abandonment would not increase access to Rock Creek, correct?
James?
Well, it doesn't appear so. But like I said, I tried to get a more definitive answer on that by going through records of the county, and I could not find anything that was very specific on the Daly abandonment. And the reason why I find that situation odd is that the abandoned right-of-way on the end of 12th was given to the Halleck's property when it wasn't adjacent to it, which is not typical. So I do question whether or not that was done correctly.
I noticed that we got double the correspondence protesting this issue, this abandonment, but we still have not received the correspondence that was addressed to the council from Mr. Howell. Is there a way that we can get that tonight?
Not tonight, no.
So between this meeting and the 7 o'clock meeting, there's no staff that would be available to go up and make 6 copies of that.
Are you referring?
I thought Diane passed things.
Yeah,
out last year.
I was thinking I have
it from.
Yeah, I do actually. Let me look, cause I have the information from this from last week too, cause I thought it was
That
probably.
probably needs to be part of the record.
Yeah, that's my concern, is that Mr. Halleck's correspondence and the information that I passed out at the council should be part of the record.
I didn't get a copy of that when you passed it out.
Well, this issue come before us for action tonight, and I think that we should be able to get that and include it in the record.
And I also think that as part of the record for tonight, we need to have the applicant's information. We as council got it at the last meeting, but people in the community did not get it at all for this meeting.
And we didn't receive it from the city, we received it from a private party.
No, that, I'm talking about the application that James, the information that James, but
Oh,
yeah, the information that from Mr. Howlett came from a private citizen to me, to you guys.
But yeah, and the petition to vacate isn't included either in our packet, is that what you're
That's
talking
what I'm
about?
trying to
Yeah,
say.
that was not included in our packet,
Was
Yeah,
the
but
last
that's,
but we got 2 copies of the protest. I mean, you know,
So
we didn't take action on it at the last meeting, and we're taking action on it tonight. It should be in our packet.
Rob,
In the midst of this, when we were hearing about it at the last meeting, there was a broken water line there somewhere. Has that been taken care of?
Can I speak? Yes, I fixed the city's water line, and I brought your abandoned curb stop that I had to repair. And the reason I bought it is this is clear intent. In fact, Jim Bushnell and Bruce both came down and said, yeah, we forgot we had that curb stop there. And that is in the portion to be vacated pursuant to the petition. The problem is that we repaired your line. That was stated 3 times, it was abandoned. That's one of the conditional uses that the city has for this property, is the provision of utilities.
Did you bring a bill for the city for repairing it?
I sent a letter and received a response that it was my responsibility. That's all attached to the packet. My proposal in my memo to you all was, let's just finally, I've had this property for 41 years. I've dealt with this issue for a long time. And my proposal was, hey, here's the $500 for the petition to vacate. Here's how much I'm willing to waive, the $10,000 some for the money I spent and the time repairing it, and let's just do what's right. Because the law is such in Montana that I can establish abandonment. You abandon this 25-foot of city line to this curb stop, which you abandoned, which is part of your conditional use. The city doesn't own this land. The city has a right of way. It's called my fee simple condition and subject to the city's use for egress, ingress, and the provision of utilities. You've done none of that for 70 years now.
let's go ahead and you wanna just take a small break and we'll go ahead and get copies of that runoff and so that everybody can have those.
That's what I was gonna ask for, because it seems like the left side of the table, everything he just repeated there, he has that history in this packet.
Okay.
So you,
I brought your valve too that was leaking. I mean, it's probably been leaking for 30 years.
Let's go ahead and just take a break. We wanna run some copies of that off first, James.